The domestic football season is over. Southampton won the biggest game in football at Wembley yesterday. I was there. And they will join Leicester and Ipswich in the Premier League. And we will take our now traditional look and discuss the chances of the new boys surviving up in the big league. It's a bit different for Ipswich than it is for Leicester and Southampton. Leicester, I think, 8-year stint. I mean, they won the damn thing, didn't they? In the Premier League, just one season down. Southampton, 11-year stint. Ipswich, it's new for them. They haven't been in the top table since, I think, 2002. As you can see on the thumbnails I've put up there from the last couple of years, very, very different. Well, completely binary in terms of 2022 and 2023. Look, Fulham, Bournemouth and Forest we were discussing 2 years back. They all survived, but Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United, you can see we were discussing last year, they all went down. We're not going to get another binary flip, are we? Surely there's going to be some difference else, yeah. The problems that we think we've got with the pyramid and the difference between the EFL and the Premier League are just going to be talked about more and more and more. Let's have a look and see what the bookies are saying. Before you get in the comments, just understand how bookies' odds work. They are a liability, not a probability, but they're a good fun guide as to where people are putting their money. And you can see, as of right now, the favourites for Premier League relegation are actually the champions from the EFL Championship, Leicester City. I guess the reason for that, well, I think there's two reasons probably, but I think the main reason is Leicester, we think there's going to be a double FFP breach. Obviously, they managed to kind of wriggle out of jurisdiction of being charged by the Premier League, but being in the EFL. Hopefully, that loophole is closed for future, because it's very silly that you're travelling in between leagues and one can't punish you from a distance. But chickens and coming home to roost, yes, they wriggled out of it last season in terms of, possible sanctions. So there may be a double sanction in terms of points deductions for actual two breaches, we think. We're going to find out, and it's been a bit messy, hasn't it, with Leicester, which use the word robust, don't they? Leicester robustly defending their position. So I think the reason that Leicester are favourites right now is because of the potential for, well, you tell me, 4, 6, 8, 10? Crikey, how many points might they get deducted? Not a very good start. Well, it might rumble into the autumn before it actually gets decided. You know how long these things take in court. The other thing, which we need to talk about as it pertains to Ipswich, is manager links. The last thing you want when you've just been promoted is to lose your continuity, and Enzo Maresca is being pretty heavily linked today. Look, I know it's madness with the managers at the moment. With the Chelsea job, that could change. He could stay. He could go. We are going to find out this week in terms of Manchester United, Chelsea and Brighton, and where things are going to end up in terms of the management positions. Excuse me, I'm suffering from the lurgy, so I'm going to go like that. Absolutely disgusting. And we are going to continue so I can actually keep talking with my horrible lurgy I've got at the moment. You can see Ipswich are second favourites to go down. As I said, they have less Premier League infrastructure because they haven't been there in eons, 2 decades, and exactly the same thing. I don't think any danger of any points deductions for Ipswich. We had a pretty good illustration of the FFP position on their most recent set of accounts. But if Ipswich lose Kieran McKenna, I would imagine those odds will move immediately if McKenna walks out of the building at Ipswich to take. Well, we don't think Chelsea now. Brighton, that's still a possibility. Manchester United, who the hell knows? Does feel like a big jump for a manager who's never managed in the Premier League to go to Manchester United, one of the biggest jobs in the world. But I suppose the other thing with Ipswich is, there's players there that were signed from Accrington and Fleetwood that have been really, really brilliantly coached by Kieran McKenna for back-to-back promotions. And I hate myself for saying it as an Ipswich Town fan, but in football, a sharp rise is often followed by a sharp... Well, I won't even finish that sentence. Interesting there, you can see Southampton, who just came up yesterday, actually just little 1 digit behind Everton. And again, I think the reasoning there is, are we going to get more chaos? Everton, is there a potential administration with 777 partners not being able to be ratified with the, I think it's called the fit and proper persons test. I can't remember what they call it now. There's different names in the Premier League and the EFL. Don't start me on the Premier League and the EFL. Have different rules for everything. But yeah, so I think the idea of chaos at Everton is probably implied in those betting positions there. And Southampton, newly up, are 6-4. We talk about a few loan players and whatnot of Southampton, and Russ Martin up there for the first time. But hey, so if Kieran McKenna and Enzo Maresca actually end up being the manager of the 2 promoted teams, we're going to get new managers there. Well, the chances are, if they're replaced, maybe you will get a Steve Cooper or someone going in who does have Premier League experience. Who the hell knows? Speaking of Steve Cooper, his former club, Nottingham Forest, then following the bet. It does feel, though, they've established themselves over 2 years, got over that hump and the FFP deduction last season. That was the right season to get it, wasn't it? Wolves, I mean, they were miles clear of relegation, weren't they? Brentford is an interesting one if they're at the end of a cycle and they perhaps lose one, either both, of Thomas Frank and Ivan Toney. And then Fulham, Bournemouth. I know it feels like they're one bad transfer window, one bad, run away from being in a relegation fight, but been miles clear of it. And Crystal Palace were brilliant at the end of last season. So let's just talk briefly about each club then. So Leicester were a bit of a weird one in the Championship, weren't they? Because they're powered to promotion with a 97-point total. There was that weird point at the start of the season where they were winning by the odd goal and trying to play keep ball, and no one was really sure how convincing they were. But you can't argue with the points totals in the end, can you? Are they one of these teams where people make what seems a silly comment that are they better suited to playing Premier League football and Championship football and the hustle and bustle and the Saturday, Tuesday and the 46 games? I don't know, you tell me. But certainly we think the points deductions come in, and if the manager goes, then yeah, not a good start. And the players who took them down were certainly good enough for the Premier League. A few of them still there will have a lot to prove, because they weren't good enough for the Premier League last time. Did I say good enough for the Premier League? Good enough for the Championship. You know what I mean, don't you? But they weren't good enough for the Premier League last time, and they've really, really got to step up. And you'd imagine recruitment's going to be tricky if they are being sanctioned for potential breaches. Ipswich, you would really worry if Kieran McKenna wasn't there. Even if, say, Steve Cooper, for example, an experienced, maybe more pragmatic counter-attacking manager comes in, you're then taking players who have been really, specifically drilled for 2 years in a certain way of playing. So big problems for Ipswich. A lot of people were saying to me, Ipswich, they might be one of these teams who goes up with momentum, gets a good start. Does the momentum go with Kieran McKenna? And what are they going to do in terms of the transfer market? Because they barely added to their League One team. I know they spent well in League One. So it's going to be very interesting in terms of one big flag outgoing Ipswich. And, what do they do in terms of signing? I don't think they'll go as far as Forest did with, spending tons. Probably not even a Burnley level of spend. But I don't think it will be a Luton spend, where I think the top income up was £5 million. Southampton, going to be interesting. I mean, they take Harwood Bellis, and those obligations to buy, and that they could really do with making Flynn Downs full time and Che Adams signing a new contract. Else, you're almost looking at it and saying, are they actually going to start weaker if those players, Harwood Bellis will be. I think that's a definitive on the contract, isn't it? But you do get situations where loan players go, like Nottingham Forest a couple of years ago, and you're like, okay, this team is weaker than it even started. Russell Martin is going to be fascinating. They've always kind of been Russell Martin's teams, just under where you kind of expect them to be. And the target, I guess, is 17th place. Let me know in the comments who survives. Give me your thoughts. I know there's going to be a lot changing between now And then a lot changed for Southampton yesterday. Congratulations to them. You can check out my vlog from Wembley and the biggest game in football.